welcome to Foster Friday Live. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to talk about becoming a foster parent in South Carolina and kind of the initial process of the application and getting started. So thank you so much for joining us. Karla is here, and Karla, will you just introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. I'm Karla Littleton, and I work with the South Carolina Foster Parent Association. This is my 9th year with them.
Wow.
Yeah. And before that, I worked with the statewide program coordinator for recruitment at DSS, Keith Frazier, for a number of years, a long time. And so when Heartfelt Calling was born, it just kind of was a natural transition. So I've been there almost 9 years. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the connection between the South Carolina Foster Parent Association, Heartfelt Calling, and DSS, because they really all work very closely in partnership with each other, but sometimes it can be confusing who does what and where do you go?
Sure. Again, in 2010 or 11, DSS realized that they really didn't have data that they needed for reporting purposes. And so back then, the licensing was handled by each county, and clearly they couldn't provide data because they were taking care of children, keeping them safe.
The goal, yeah.
Right. So Heartfelt Calling, which is a program of the South Carolina Foster Parent Association, we have 8 or 10 different programs on the road. Is the car giveaways and that kind of thing. But anyway, Heartfelt Calling became a program of the Foster Parent Association, and so we do the initial intake for anyone who wants to foster or adopt through DSS.
Wow. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm always have lots of DSS foster families here. We have privately licensed foster families, so they have probably worked with Heartfelt Calling as their intake agency. So as you have thoughts and questions and comments, please share them with us. Let us know that you're here so that we can say, hey, but so we're really talking about mostly the Heartfelt Calling program. Sure. They are the intake for new foster families, prospective foster families that want to foster specifically through DSS.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about what's going on with Heartfelt Calling. What should people know? Are there kind of changes as we go into 2020?
Yeah, it's so exciting. DSS is implementing with our new director that has come on board, Director Leach. They are implementing so many exciting changes. One of the things is just utilizing and maximizing their personnel that they have. Yeah. So they are now licensing and approving adoption applications to the need. They know what families they have. They know what children are waiting, and so those families are being looked at because back in when people would want to adopt, say 0 to 2 or 0 to 5, it's just very rare that those children are ever available for out and out adoption. And so we encourage everyone to foster first if they can, just because but they have to do it with the goal of reunification.
Right.
And a lot of people are not up for that, and that's okay. In that case, they can find another adoption agency or something. But some of the changes that are taking place right now too are adoption orientation has been added to the foster home licensing orientation, and so everyone attends the same one, and the process is handled pretty much the same way for both now. With adoption, you get approved. You don't get a license to adopt.
Right.
With foster home licensing, you have a license.
Okay.
And that's, one of the confusing things I think that people find as well.
So the first step, someone decides they're ready to foster or they want to adopt. They fill out an application at Heartfelt Calling, and then what?
Yeah, we have a new online application actually that just went live in August. And so a lot of people we're actually seeing a lot of people come back through that had inquired back in like 2015 or 16, and we never were able to get in touch with them to do an application, and they're going online and doing them now. So we're excited about that. And once they do the application, we contact them about orientation, And once they can walk into orientation without registering, just to get more information.
Without applying first.
Without applying first. That's right. Those two steps are interchangeable.
Okay.
But once they have been to orientation and applied, the next step is fingerprinting. And then we will register them for their classes. The pre-service training. In our state, we require 14 hours pre-service training. And then send it to DSS for processing.
So they're starting with Heartfelt Calling, which obviously is very connected to DSS. They're doing the orientation application, and it's once they finish that pre-service training that they are then sent.
No, once they're registered for pre-service training.
Once they're registered for pre-service training.
Finish the fingerprints or schedule them, and then register for pre-service training.
Okay,
Yep.
and that's when they're assigned their licensing worker. Okay, great. Hey, Monica, Jill, Randy, we're so glad you're joining us. Thanks for being here. So, as you are working with all these families, these prospective foster families, prospective adoptive families, what should they know before they're getting started? What should they be thinking about before they fill out that application or before they attend that first orientation?
I think that families need to realize that fostering is temporary. It's designed to be temporary.
Right.
Outcomes are always better when children can go to either their biological family of origin or family member and stay part of that family and stay connected.
Which kinship is a huge
focus
for DSS right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And another thing they need to realize is, again, licensing to the need. If you fill out an application and you, for whatever reason, can only foster children that are 0 to 3, by all means, we need you, because we need families to get children back into county. A lot of children are out of their counties of origin. And so we need extra families in each county so that we can move children, closer
because
to family.
Because there's kids in foster care of all ages.
Right. But one of the biggest needs that we have right now, and that, if you can think about this as you're doing your application and, really think hard, sibling groups. If you have space for a sibling group of at least 2, but preferably 3 or 4.
Right.
Or 10, no.
Yeah.
But if you could really consider, fostering 3 or 4 to keep a sibling group together, that would be great.
Right.
Because, when they were removed.
And obviously, as you take more siblings, that age range expands because they're not all going to be under 2 years old, more than likely.
But when they're removed from everything they've ever known. Yeah. And if the only thing that they have familiar is a sibling or 2 or 3, that reduces the trauma tremendously.
Right. So as someone's considering, they're filling out that application and they have to indicate their age range, what would you consider them, what would you encourage them to consider as they're choosing their age range?
If they could go up to 12 or 13, that would be great. Now we also need homes for teens.
Yeah.
I have heard at some of the town hall meetings that within a couple of years, we're going to have an extra 700 teenagers that are going to have to be in homes because of the Families First Act. And so we really.
And so that's 700 families pretty much that we're going to need.
Or at least
to
350.
To make that happen. Wow. So now as people are, and I know I talk to people too that, they're worried about, their parenting abilities for maybe multiple children or older children. They're worried about their own children that are in the home that might be younger and maybe keeping a birth order. So as you talk to families, how do you help them determine, what might be an appropriate age range for them? Or
it's appropriate. Whatever they feel comfortable with is appropriate.
Right.
There once was a time that we would tell people whatever their age range was, DSS wouldn't call them outside their age range. But now the placement groups, their biggest goal is to keep children in county. Okay. So now they do actually call every home that has an open bed, regardless of the age that you've selected.
This is your preference.
But you can say no.
Yeah.
And it's no black mark against you. You can say no and they'll still call you the next time. And what they have found is, in doing that, some families have said, yeah, okay,
We'll try a little outside of our age range.
And it's worked beautifully.
Yeah.
And so that's working out too.
And I think that every family is different. We found that school-age children work really well for us because childcare is challenging to find on short notice, with both parents working. So, and people come to foster care for all different reasons. As they examine their motivations for fostering, how they come to fostering, what are some of the things that they should kind of be thinking about their own family, their own reason to coming to foster care, their own dynamics in their home before they jump in?
They should realize that this is hard. It's hard. And it's time consuming and it's hard. I've never heard anyone, and again, in my 9th year, talked to a lot of foster families.
Yeah.
I have never had a foster family that said, man, I wish I had never fostered. They all say, it's hard, but this, and I had one family tell me last week that she said, it's just got to become a lifestyle. It's got to become part of your life, part of who you are, part of the fabric of who you are. And if you, feel like you're going to get some foster children in your home and just go on with life as usual and no outside interference, that's not the case. And so that's one of the things we try to push at orientation. And that's why orientation actually started, because families would get into it and not realize, how many people would be coming into their home and how many people, all the appointments and different
Helping
things.
them know what to expect in advance so that they're not surprised. Yeah.
And so, again, I've never had anybody say, I wish I had never fostered. That was the worst. Everybody says it's hard, but wow, there's so many blessings and I love it.
So that can kind of be a misconception that, you could just kind of add another child into the mix and things are going to go on as normal. What might be some of the other misconceptions that people have as they're considering foster care or adoption?
Yeah, a lot of people will contact us and say, I want to foster to adopt. Right. And foster to adopt is not actually even a thing. In South Carolina, what it actually means is that you are approved to adopt and you are willing to take a child who is not completely legally free. They call that a high legal risk. There is a chance that they may go to some relative or something, but you're willing to take that child as a pre-adoptive placement with every intention that they will become legally free. Mm-hmm. So for that period of time, you're issued a foster home license for that child.
Just for that
You're
child.
not called for other children. Mm-hmm. You don't foster temporarily. It's just for that child. Mm-hmm. And that is actually what foster to adopt is. If you get into foster care to adopt, statistically speaking, if you foster long enough, there will be a child in your home that becomes legally free for adoption, and you're certainly welcome to be considered first, actually, to adopt that child.
Yeah.
But in order to, and a lot of foster parents, I think over 70 some odd percent, but 70, maybe 5% of the children adopted from foster care in South Carolina are adopted by their foster parents. However, you have to be willing to, and not only be okay with an initial goal of reunification, but you have to be willing to be a cheerleader for those bio parents, really and do everything you can.
Because we've had 14 kids in our home, and not one has ever become legally free for adoption. And, that's not our goal. And so in some ways that makes it a little bit easier for us to wholeheartedly support that. But, I can imagine that if my desire really was, my intention really was to eventually adopt, that might be.
That would be hard.
That'd be heartbreaking to
really
say those goodbyes. It still is hard to say goodbye. But, for families that are getting into fostering, I think you're right. You do have to be a cheerleader for the birth family and reunification, and there are ups and downs that come with that. But yeah, so as you help families prepare for this, what advice might you have for them? What have you kind of learned along the way? And for those of you that are watching, what advice do you have if you are talking to a new foster family?
Um, hmm.
Or prospective, someone who's
Right,
coming into
right.
this?
It only takes probably, gosh, 4 to 5 months to become licensed to foster.
Mm-hmm.
And you usually will get called for a placement before you know you were licensed.
Right.
You know, we've had people say, I didn't even know my
Yeah.
license was, completed, and they called us. I would like them to know that the need is great and that these are children. And I would think that you need to consider your own motivation. Who are you doing this for? We have a lot of people that say, oh, I could never, give a child back. And I just couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had someone recently who said that. And, I told her, I said, well, just think about it. What if, heaven forbid, you and your husband were in a horrible accident and you didn't die, but you had to be rehabbed or whatever, and go to some long-term facility to do that for several months. And you had no family, you had no, whatever. And your children ended up, in foster care, or maybe they even ended up with someone else,
Right.
whatever, but for that period of time. And then you're better. You worked really hard, and you're better, and your children came to see you and they were excited about, mom and dad are going to be better soon. And then you get to the end of your journey with that, and those people don't want to give you your child back. Think about that with your own children, that if you have them, how would that feel? And, when mom and dad, when they do work really hard and accomplish all their goals, and, that really is the best thing. And so, and we're the adult, we should be able to go, okay, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt really badly. But, as adults, we do lots of things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Or we should. And so that's the other thing, is just, try to remember that it's for the child.
Yeah. So Kelly says, I say yes, reunification is the goal. However, foster parents have to advocate for the foster children in their home. You know them better than anyone.
That's absolutely true. Sometimes for therapies, sometimes. Now, I'll tell you one thing that's exciting too, is DSS is now implementing well-being teams.
Mm-hmm.
And each region has its own nurse, RN, that is going to be part of the well-being or the team.
Right.
Yeah. And so it won't be, hopefully it won't be as difficult to sometimes, as you realize a child needs therapy or needs whatever, because you'll have someone to back you up. That,
hey.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
That's exciting. Yeah. And I think they're going to add an educational component to that.
Okay.
Down the road.
Yeah. So advocating for the best interest of the child, whether that's resources, whether that's, just making sure that everyone on the team is aware of what's going on. That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Kelly. So as we kind of wrap up, would you share with us, we talked about foster care. We've talked about foster to adopt, which is not officially a thing. And we've talked about adoption. There is a new adoption policy in South Carolina.
It's not necessarily a policy. It's guidelines. Because it just policy is only written, every so often after it goes through legislature or whatever. But right now, like I said, they're maximizing, efficiency for everyone and trying to get children permanency faster.
Right.
And so right now the guideline is, if you want to adopt one child, not a sibling group at all, but just one child. The vast majority of the children that are available for adoption right now are between 7 and 17. And so you need to be able to find a range within there.
And within 7 to 17.
Yeah, not 7 to 8 or even, 7 to 9. But, or 7 plus is what, we're asking families to do. And then if you're willing to adopt a sibling group of 2 or more, you can choose the 0 to 6 or 0 to 10 age range. One child will fall within that age range, and the other child will be 7 plus. So clearly that's outside the 0 to 6 age range, but it could still fall in the 0 to 10.
Right.
But anyway, 7 plus. And
so that's an important thing for a family to know before they go into the adoption process, thinking, I want to adopt a newborn. Right. Or I want to adopt 0 to 2.
Right. Because we have a lot of families who were approved for that age, and they've just been sitting empty, you
Mhm.
know, because there just aren't children to match with that age. Especially the 0 to 1 or 0 to 2. A lot of times when they're free for adoption, they're already older than that.
Right.
And so a lot of families,
because reunification is the initial goal, and they're working towards that.
Right. And so we've had a lot of families that apply for 0 to 6 or 0 to 8, whatever. And when we explain this to them, because who can argue with the fact that, yeah, you need to do what's best for the children. And if these children are waiting, clearly, you need to find families willing to take those children. And a lot of families have just said, you know what, we're good with that. We'll go up to that,
Yeah.
we'll say, 7+, whatever. So we have a lot of 7 to 12 age range, and that's perfectly acceptable. I mean, we're excited for that age range.
That's
So,
awesome. Well,
yeah.
Thank you so much, Karla. You have so much wisdom and experience to share with us, and we're
thanks.
just so grateful for having you. And Kelly says they've been calling within 2 weeks of the child being placed in our home. They are awesome. Is that the the well-being teams? That's great. We are excited to hear that, and we thank all of you for joining us, and we will see you next week on Foster Friday Live. Bye.